During a business trip last autumn, I booked a room at a historic hotel downtown. The place had been renovated but still retained much of its old-world charm. High ceilings, ornate moldings, and vintage decor made it feel like stepping back in time. I was intrigued by its history and looked forward to a comfortable stay. My room was spacious with a king-size bed and a view overlooking the city square. After a long day of meetings, I decided to relax with a hot shower. The bathroom was modern yet kept the classic tiles and fixtures. As I stepped out of the shower, I noticed the mirror was fogged up except for one spot where it looked like someone had wiped it clean. I found that odd but dismissed it, thinking perhaps the ventilation caused it. I got dressed and headed out for dinner. Returning later that night, I prepared to settle in. As I was setting my alarm, I heard a soft thud coming from the wardrobe. It was a large, antique piece of furniture with intricate carvings. I hesitated before opening it, half expecting something to jump out, but it was empty, except for the hotel robe hanging inside. Shaking off the unease, I got into bed and turned off the lights. Just as I was drifting off, I heard the creaking of floorboards. It sounded like footsteps pacing back and forth at the foot of my bed. I sat up, straining my eyes in the darkness, but saw nothing. The room was silent again. Convincing myself it was just the building settling, I lay back down. Minutes later, the footsteps resumed, this time closer. My heartbeat quickened. I reached for the bedside lamp and switched it on. The room was empty. Feeling unsettled, I decided to leave the light on. I eventually fell into a restless sleep. In the middle of the night, I woke up shivering. The room had become freezing cold. My breath formed misty clouds as I exhaled. I grabbed the extra blanket from the foot of the bed and wrapped it around me. That's when I noticed the wardrobe door was ajar. I was certain I had closed it earlier. I got up to close it earlier. I stopped in my tracks, fear gripping me. Inside the wardrobe, the hotel robe swayed gently, as if someone had brushed past it. A sudden rush of cold air blew past me, and the door slammed shut on its own. Panicking, I grabbed my keycard and left the room, not caring that I was in my pajamas. I went down to the front desk, where the night manager looked up in surprise. I told him what had happened, trying to keep my voice steady. He listened attentively, and then offered to switch me to another room. As we were walking back to get my things, he shared that others had reported similar experiences in that room. The hotel was old, and some believed it was haunted by a former guest who had never checked out. He assured me that the new room was in a different wing where no disturbances had been noted. I spent the rest of the night in the new room without incident. The next morning I checked out and decided not to mention the events to anyone else. I wasn't sure I even believed in ghosts, but I couldn't deny what I had experienced. Weeks later, back at home, I found an item in my suitcase that didn't belong to me, a vintage pocket watch engraved with initials I didn't recognize. I had no idea how it got there. The hands were stuck at 3:15, the exact time I had woken up that night. I got rid of it, hoping to leave whatever lingered from that hotel behind. Even now, I sometimes wake up in the middle of the night, feeling that same cold chill, wondering if the uninvited guest followed me home. I had always been fascinated by historic places, so when I planned my vacation, I chose to stay at an old hotel that was once a grand mansion in the 1800s. It was tucked away in a small town known for its antique shops and rich history. The hotel boasted elegant rooms furnished with period pieces, offering guests a taste of the past. Upon arrival, I was greeted by the manager, an elderly gentleman who seemed to know every detail about the property's history. He led me to my room on the second floor, pointing out various artifacts and paintings along the way. My room was charming, complete with a canopy bed and a writing desk by the window. After spending the day exploring the town, I returned to the hotel feeling satisfied and ready to relax. I settled into the armchair by the fireplace, flipping through a book one picked up from a local shop. As evening turned into night, the hotel grew quiet, and the only sound was the crackling of the fire. Just as I was about to turn in, I heard faint whispers. At first, I thought they were coming from outside, perhaps from other guests in the hallway. But when I opened the door, the corridor was empty. The whispers seemed to be coming from within the walls themselves. I pressed my ear against the wall near the fireplace, and the murmuring grew clearer but still unintelligible. It sounded like multiple voices overlapping, speaking in hushed tones. A chill ran down my spine. I tried to reason that it might be old pipes or the winds. Determined to ignore it, I got into bed and turned off the lights. The whispers persisted, growing slightly louder. I pulled the covers over my head, trying to block out the sound. Then, distinctly, I heard my name whispered softly. My eyes snapped open and I sat up abruptly. I turned on the bedside lamp and looked around the room. Everything appeared normal. The whispers had stopped. Feeling unnerved, I decided to leave the light on and eventually fell into a light sleep. Around 3 a.m., I awoke to the sound of soft knocking. It was coming from behind the large painting hanging above the fireplace, a portrait of a woman in Victorian attire. The knocking was rhythmic, almost like a coded message. I stared at the painting, and for a moment I thought I saw the woman's eyes move, looking directly at me. My heart pounded as I debated whether to investigate or leave the room altogether. Summoning my courage, I approached the painting. I reached out to touch the frame, and suddenly the knocking stopped. The silence was deafening. Just as I was about to step back, a gust of cold air blew through the room, extinguishing the fireplace. That was enough for me. I grabbed my essentials and left the room, heading straight for the lobby. The night attendant looked surprised to see me. I explained that I couldn't stay in that room due to the disturbances. He didn't seem shocked and offered to move me to a room on the first floor. As he prepared the new room, he mentioned that several guests had reported strange occurrences in that part of the hotel. The building was old, and some believed it was haunted by the original inhabitants. He assured me the first floor was usually quiet. I spent the rest of the night in the new room without any issues. In the morning, I checked out earlier than planned. The manager asked if everything was all right, and I gave a vague response. I didn't want to delve into the details. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that the whispers were more than just residual energy. It felt personal, as if the walls themselves were trying to communicate. I haven't stayed in a historic hotel since, preferring the predictability of modern accommodations. I had been on the road for hours, driving through endless stretches of countryside with nothing but the hum of my car to keep me company. Night was falling, and I needed a place to rest. I spotted a small hotel nestled between towering oak trees, a quaint, old-fashioned building with a faded sign that read Oakwood Inn. It seemed charming enough, so I decided to stop for the night. The lobby was cozy, filled with antique furniture and the scent of polished wood. A woman at the front desk greeted me with a warm smile. She handed me a brass key attached to a heavy keychain shaped like an oak leaf. My room was on the 3rd floor, at the end of a long hallway lined with vintage wallpaper and old photographs. Entering the room, I noticed it was well kept but had an air of antiquity. The bed was large with a wrought iron frame, and a single window overlooked the dense forest behind the hotel. I tried to open the window to let in some fresh air, but it was locked shut. I searched for a latch or a key but found nothing. Figuring it was just an old building quirk, I decided to let it go. After settling in, I headed down to the hotel restaurant for a quick meal. The food was surprisingly good, and the few other patrons kept to themselves. Returning to my room, I prepared to get some much-needed sleep. As I drifted off, I heard a faint tapping sound. At first, I thought it was the old pipes or perhaps tree branches brushing against the building. The tapping grew louder, more insistent, like someone was knocking on the window. I sat up, my heart pounding. The room was dark except for a sliver of moonlight filtering through the curtains. I stared at the window, but all I could see was my own reflection. The tapping continued, rhythmic and deliberate. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just the building settling or some nocturnal animal outside. Lying back down, I pulled the covers over my head, trying to block out the sound. Moments later, I heard a soft whisper, barely audible but unmistakable. It sounded like my name. I froze, every muscle tense. The whisper came again, more urgent this time. I gathered my courage and decided to investigate. Grabbing my phone for light, I approached the window slowly. The tapping had stopped, but the air felt heavy. I shone the light on the window pane, searching for any sign of what could have made the noise. Nothing. Just the darkness of the forest beyond. Suddenly, a face appeared inches from mine on the other side of the glass, a pale, gaunt face with hollow eyes staring directly at me. I stumbled backward, dropping my phone. The room plunged into darkness as I scrambled to pick it up. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. When I finally got the light back on and looked at the window again, the face was gone. Breathing heavily, I tried to rationalize what I had seen. Maybe it was a trick of the light or my tired mind playing games. I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep after that, so I decided to go downstairs and inform the front desk. The lobby was empty, and the woman from earlier was nowhere to be found. I rang the bell on the counter, but no one answered. The hotel felt different now, cold and unwelcoming. I noticed a door behind the desk slightly ajar and decided to peek inside. It led to a small office filled with old records and dusty ledgers. On the desk lay an open journal. Curiosity got the better of me, and I glanced at the pages. It was a log of incidents reported by guests over the years, complaints about tapping noises, whispers, and sightings of a pale figure at the third-floor window. My blood ran cold as I read accounts eerily similar to my own experience. Just then, the front door opened, and the woman from the desk entered carrying a stack of linens. She looked surprised to see me, but quickly composed herself. I told her about the tapping in the face at the window. Her expression turned somber, and she sighed heavily. She explained that many years ago, a guest had tragically passed away in that very room. Ever since, there had been reports of strange occurrences. The window was locked permanently after several guests tried to escape in a panic. She apologized for not informing me earlier and offered to move me to another room. I agreed, not wanting to spend another minute in that room. She helped me gather my things and escorted me to a room on the first floor. This room felt warmer, more modern, and thankfully the windows opened. I managed to get some rest, and the next morning I checked out early. As I was leaving, the woman handed me a small envelope. Inside was a voucher for a free stay if I ever chose to return. I nodded politely but knew I wouldn't be coming back. Driving away from the Oakwood Inn, I couldn't shake the feeling that the past still lingered there, trapped behind a locked window, waiting for someone to notice. Last summer, I attended a conference in a city I'd never visited before. The company booked me a room at a sleek, modern hotel downtown. The building was a mix of glass and steel, towering above the surrounding structures. It had all the amenities you could ask for, and was within walking distance of the convention center. When I arrived, the lobby was bustling with people. I checked in and was given a room on the 14th floor. The elevator ride up was smooth, and the hallways were brightly lit with contemporary art adorning the walls. My room was spacious with a fantastic view of the city skyline. After the first day of the conference, I returned to the hotel feeling tired. I decided to check out the rooftop lounge, which I'd heard offered stunning views. I took the elevator up, but oddly, the button for the rooftop didn't light up when I pressed it. A hotel staff member inside the elevator mentioned that the rooftop was closed for a private event. Disappointed, I headed back to my room. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the rooftop and decided to see if I could sneak up there for a quick look. I took the elevator again, and this time the button for the 16th floor, the highest floor before the rooftop, lit up. When the doors opened, I stepped out into a dimly lit corridor that looked different from the other floors. The decor was outdated, the walls a dull beige with old carpeting underfoot. It was eerily quiet, and I wondered if I had made a mistake. I walked down the hallway, hoping to find a stairwell that would lead me to the rooftop. As I moved further in, I noticed that all the room numbers were odd and out of sequence. A door at the end of the hall caught my attention. It was slightly ajar, and a soft glow emanated from inside. I approached cautiously, peering through the crack. The room was furnished like a lounge from decades past, complete with velvet sofas and a gramophone playing soft music. There were people inside dressed in vintage attire, laughing and chatting as if attending a party. Confused, I wondered if I had stumbled upon a themed event. I considered joining them to ask for directions, but something felt off. None of the guests cast reflections in the large mirror on the wall. My breath caught in my throat as I realized that the entire scene seemed surreal. Backing away slowly, I decided it was time to return to my room. I headed back to the elevator, but when I pressed the button, nothing happened. The indicator lights were off and the doors didn't open. Panic set in as I searched for the stairs. Finding a door labeled stairwell, I pushed it open and started descending. The stairs seemed endless, and after descending several flights, I checked the floor number 16th floor. That couldn't be right. I kept going, but each time I passed a door, it still read 16th floor. My heart raced as I realized I was stuck in some sort of loop. I re-entered the hallway, which now seemed darker. The music from the room at the end of the hall was louder, and the laughter more intense. I felt drawn to it despite my fear. As I approached the room again, the door swung open wider. One of the guests turned to look at me, a chilling smile spreading across his face. He raised a glass as if toasting me, and the others turned in unison, their eyes void of any emotion. I spun around and ran back to the elevator. This time, the doors were open. I rushed inside, frantically pressing the button for my floor. The doors closed slowly, and I could see the guests standing at the end of the hall, watching me with those empty eyes. When the elevator doors opened again, I was on the 14th floor. The hallway was brightly lit, and everything seemed normal. I hurried back to my room, locking the door behind me. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning I checked out early. I approached the front desk and casually asked if there was a 16th floor lounge. The receptionist gave me a puzzled look and said the hotel only had 15 floors, not counting the rooftop. I didn't know how to respond. I simply nodded and left, suitcase in hand. To this day, I can't explain what happened. I haven't told anyone about the vanishing floor, fearing they'd think I was imagining things. But I know what I experienced was real, and it still haunts me. There was something